What's up, sports fans, and welcome to the Sports Opinions Podcast. I am your host, Alex Cuesta. With me today is a guy who, at this point in the podcast, I didn't think I'd be getting people that have pretty high profile, but I'm actually really gracious that he agreed to come on the podcast. He is a grad school professor over at Rutgers University, entrepreneur, and wealth manager for pro athletes. He's Andy Koerner. What's up, Andy?
How you doing, Alex?
I'm doing really, really, really well. Again, I didn't mean to flatter you, but I really appreciate you coming on the show.
My pleasure.
Now, it's funny the way that I even got in touch with you, because a few weeks back, I did my podcast with Kevin Malice, who's my good buddy, and then all of a sudden I get, you retweeted it, because I guess I blasted out for Kevin's name. You retweeted it, and I right away went to Kevin. I'm like, who is this guy? And he's like, he's a great dude. And I'm like, okay, will he come on the podcast? Like, just ask. So that's how that got going. And that's really cool of you. I really appreciate that again.
It's my pleasure. Kevin's a good friend of mine as well.
Yeah, Kevin is an absolutely great dude. All right. So one of the main reasons why I was drawn to you is obviously with sports, but you are a financial advisor to pro athletes. And I find that to be something extremely interesting, because we always hear of the stories of athletes that come into pro leagues and they first time seeing a whole lot of money, and all of a sudden their career ends 4, 5, 10 years down the road, and we hear about the guys that are broke. And it's really a sad story considering all the millions that a lot of these guys make. So first thing I have to ask you is, how did you get into the financial advising part, and what pro leagues do you represent players in?
Yeah, I work with players in the NFL as well as the WNBA, NBA, and Major League Baseball. Mostly NFL. I got into it really serendipitous. My wife and I have always been involved at Rutgers. I was actually a ball boy in the Final Four team way back in 1976.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Still friends with a lot of the people that were on that team. Graduated from Rutgers, and then we got involved with the athletic program. We had 2 scholarships that we had endowed for 2 of the sports teams for years. And while I was doing that, I started getting to know the players. I was guest lecturing at the university, and some of the coaches would circle back and I would speak to the teams, and then individual players would come up. And it was really just from a teaching perspective. It wasn't a matter of thinking that they would someday be clients. Actually, 2 of the first athletes I worked with that went on to the NFL, they were both walk-ons that came to Rutgers when the team was 1-10. So you can imagine I had a guy that didn't get a scholarship, was on a 1-10 football team. So, of course, they both went on to be captains of Super Bowl champs. That's why I say it was somewhat serendipitous. They were both.
That's so cool.
Amazing, and both great. My clients are very close friends. One thing I pride myself on is that if any of my clients knocked on the door at Thanksgiving, my wife and I would be thrilled to see them. And that's very, very unusual in this space, in the industry.
I think that's unusual in a lot of things, especially with you, not to cut you off, but with you handling money, and money being such a, it's always been such a source of contention, I think, from the beginning of time, is money. And for you to still maintain such close relationships with people that you're advising them on their future, essentially, with their wealth, that is a testament to basically how you do your job.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And by design, I just work with a couple dozen professional athletes, because it's more than just buying somebody a stock or a bond. I want to educate them. And that's really how I transitioned to working with essentially professional athletes, is I feel the gap and how they've gotten into trouble is just a matter of not being taught from the word go, staying within themselves, avoiding debt. Because if they can get through a university, they get a college degree, and they get it while they're playing a sport. I mean, have you ever seen how thick a playbook is for a football team? They're learning that. They're doing the exercise, they're doing the lifting, they're doing the practicing, they're traveling to away games, and they're getting their degree. I think they can handle personal finance if it's taught to them in the right way.
Yeah, there a lot of the people and a lot of the good thing about Rutgers athletes, I feel like that's you know, you said that's who you branch out from more. We're not at Rutgers. I'm from Jersey too. I'm from the same area as Kevin over at Manchester Township. So I grew up with him. And Rutgers always been a school where you really do have a lot of 4 year athletes, maybe 3 year if they're that good, but a lot of them do see their senior year, and a lot of them do get that education. So it's not like you're dealing with I'm not going to say the dumb athlete because they're not, but the more uneducated athlete because they were one and done, they were two and done. You're dealing with athletes that have a educational background through college.
I agree 100%. And that was one thing with when Coach Shiano was there, which is where a bulk of my players came during his program. They were always in the top 3 or 4 in terms of the APR, which measures the academics. He never had one player not graduate during his tenure at Rutgers, whatever he was here, 11 years, something like that. So that was his focus, and it came through. And that's the bulk of the players with whom I work for all these years. And not that they just did well in school, but they were in tune to learning going forward. Because that's the part I don't understand. With 78% of NFL players leave the league bankrupt, yet they're coming out of college with a degree. They've already gone through a tough university. It doesn't make sense. And that's why I wonder what is the disconnect? Are they getting the right advice? Are they being respected for who they are, or are they just working with people who happen to be a fan and are not trying to help them for the long term?
Now that's awesome because that branches into the next question that I wanted to have for you is what is one of the first bits of advice that you give to a young athlete or even an older athlete that comes to you for financial advice? Because one of the things that I've heard, and I forget who it was, I think it might have been Chris Carter, Charles Barkley, one of those guys or Keyshawn Johnson, where they do run a rookie seminar. And one of the things they tell them is you need to learn the value of no. You need to learn how to say no to people who are just latching onto you because they think that you're now going to pave their way to have whatever they want because you're making millions and they're just going to leech and they don't bring anything to the table. Are you similar in the sense where is that one of the first things that you're telling your guys is, learn the value of no and who to take care of and how to take care of them?
Absolutely, Alex. At first, I get to be that wet blanket. I can tell them, blame it on the gray-haired guy. When they're traveling, I just say, tell them we're in things that aren't liquid. We're not able to do it. We're thinking long-term. And at the same time, if it's somebody new, I'm educating them feverishly so they know why we're saying no, and they start getting used to what the money can turn into. It's just a matter of, instead of attempting to look wealthy right off the bat, acquiring a lot of debt you can never climb out of, just be a little more patient, become a little more knowledgeable, and actually create wealth that you can't outlive. Wealth that becomes powerful. You're creating jobs. You're getting involved in a franchise. You're getting investment properties, that sort of thing, where it's an empowerment, where the more they learn about it, it's just like what they're doing on the field. They want to learn more and more about it. They want to run their own business. They want to be, Joe Smith Enterprises instead of somebody just driving the big car, or you are what you wear. They start wanting to see, okay, how do I set up an LLC? How do I take it to the next level? Because we're talking about guys that went through college, and they didn't go through college and then party. They went through college and played football at the same time. So believe me, they can handle running a business, and they're the kind of person that you do want to hire.
Without a doubt. And I do have to ask you because you've obviously dealt with athletes from all walks of life. So how does the socioeconomic status of a certain athlete affect the way that you need to start educating them about money and about the value of a dollar? Because kind of what is the difference between kids in, urban or lower suburban areas where money wasn't as prevalent? So when they see this large amount of money for the first time, they just kind of go, do you find that they go a little more off the handle than certain athletes that have been around some sort of money so they do understand that value a little more? Or is it kind of just all the same? They're 18, whatever it is, 22-year-old kids that have never seen a check for $2.5 million written out in their name. Like, is there sort of that boundary there that you have to educate a little more with certain, or how does that work?
Well, for me, the people that come to me, the ones that are attracted to me, are the ones that want to learn. I'm not really making outgoing phone calls, and I haven't been from the beginning. It started off with the first two fellas that I was sitting at Alexander Library with a legal pad. They told people like them, and it's just grown maybe one, two, or three a year since then. So I'm not really reeling people in. They're not the ones that are attracted to me. And if they do meet with me, I'm not saying, oh, we're going to make 60% a month and these kind of things. So I lose to the competition who might be saying those kind of things to attract them. What I'm saying is, let's learn how to do a business plan. Let's learn how to avoid debt. The average family has $8,000 in credit card debt. If you do the minimum payment, it takes 54 years to pay it off. Some people, their eyes are going to glaze over, and I know this is not only our first meeting, this is our last meeting, and they'll move on to somebody else. So I've never really have to turn somebody down. When I get into my spiel on long-term and how to do it yourself, it really is it only attracts certain people to begin with. And that really frees me up to be able to walk through investment properties with them, do business planning, help them down the road instead of trying to get them out of credit card debt or problems like that.
So have you found that your skills as a professor, as an educator, also help you greatly in this money management field because you have a certain understanding of how to teach those that want to be taught in a way?
It's conversely, the teaching the young players is actually probably what got me offered. Rutgers came to me 4 or 5 years ago to be on a board, the head of a new department to put together the graduate school program. They wanted me to stay on as a faculty member. So it's helped keep me sharp once I've been teaching the graduate school program. It's global sports business. I teach sports finance and strategic planning. But my preparation actually was from sitting down with these football players and helping them put together their businesses. And I've done that with all of my clients. I have top entrepreneurs up in the city, litigators, that sort of thing. So I've always been on the teaching end with them. So it's really more so the opposite. The preparation with the players has prepared me to be the graduate school professor.
That's awesome. And that's something that I don't think people, when they hear professor and then they hear financial manager of athletes, they probably would have thought that one came before the other. I sure as hell did. But that's really cool to hear that the other kind of sparked the professorship, which is cool about that. We're gonna jump into some Rutgers stuff because you said you were a Rutgers alumni, and I was actually a little bit shocked when you said WNBA because I knew you represented NFL. I didn't know the extent of other athletes you represented, but when you said WNBA, and right away I thought, see Vivian Stringer, who's one of the greatest coaches in the history of basketball, not even women college. She's one of the best basketball minds ever. And it doesn't surprise me now that you say WNBA because Rutgers has a very proud women's basketball program. So that's awesome. And do all of your athletes now come from Rutgers, or since have you branched out in getting athletes from other schools as well?
Even initially, it was probably a third to half were Rutgers, because immediately my clients would get into a locker room, and if they knew what they were talking about, people would say, who taught you this? How do you know about these insurances, or how to set up a limited liability corporation? And they'd say, I talked to Andy Koerner, and they'll come over to me. So it was the same thing with WNBA or NFL. It was about half and half as they had more and more teammates that came. And I agree 100% on C. Vivian Stringer. She's not just one of the greatest coaches, she's one of the greatest people I've ever been around in my life. I consider her a mentor of mine.
I would love to have her on here one day. She just seems like such an awesome individual.
Incredible, brilliant, and always teaching.
So I do have to ask, the challenges of now managing someone in the WNBA, because the wage disparity amongst the women pro athletes is immense, from women pro athletes to male pro athletes. When it comes to them, there are so few. Like I looked up like Maya Moore, Diana Taurasi, their salaries. I think it was like a few months ago, and just to see how little that they actually make for the superstars that they are is kind of criminal, considering Maya Moore is basically the LeBron James of the WNBA. And to me, it's crazy. So how do you go about, without getting into too much detail for what you really like ins and outs with these athletes, but how do you go about advising them? Because in reality, the sad reality is they're not dealing in the tens of millions in terms of how much they're making. They're making good money, but it's not in the same sense as an NFL player, an NBA player is going to make.
Oh yeah, well, I mean that doesn't dissuade me in any way. I mean, even with the NFL players, I'm also working with their younger brothers, their parents,
Mm-hmm.
their uncles, all sorts of people within the unit, within the family unit, will come to me. I've never been concerned about having a minimum or what somebody's going to do. I am energized by working with the WNBA players. I do feel that they are overlooked, and it's something, once again, we immediately get into how to buy your property, how to avoid credit card debt. So it's very similar in that way in how I work with them. And when you hear me talking about investment properties and getting your own businesses, one part of my niche is about 80% of what I recommend to my clients does not compensate me in any way, but it's how my wife and I have built our wealth. So I'd be remiss in not saying the exact same strategy when I'm teaching my young athletes.
So that's pretty cool. So you kind of just have a base that you branch off of, regardless of how much money the person is worth net value. You really just have a base message that obviously has worked because you have plenty of people that are now starting to come to you, and that's really, really cool, and they stay with you. And that's always a good thing that says you're doing something right.
Yeah, I enjoy it. I just keep it I keep the message very simple. Just living within yourself. You know, it's not what you're wearing, it's not what you're driving, and just get them focusing on not how much these assets are going to grow, but what kind of income we're going to get from these assets eventually to live on. Because I am working with a clientele that can be retired at age 24 or 34. Nobody knows.
I really wish more people thought like you, because if they did, then this planet would just be significantly better. It's not about what you're wearing or how much it's worth. It really isn't. Um, I have to ask you though, are you now only strictly representing pro athletes, or can kind of anyone seek you out for money advice? Or are you just trying to stick to the pro athlete?
It's half and half. And I've always kept it that way because I want to be a source of referrals for my athletes. So I work with some of the top business people in the tri-state area and internationally as well. And they help me mentor. They even come in and speak to my graduate school class. I have some of the top actuaries, portfolio managers that come in, business owners that come in, and they're thrilled to speak to my class because of our close relationship. We've been working for so long, and that's the kind of people that are attracted to me. Is I don't even have to get through the question. I teach an 8 a.m. class for 3 hours, and literally, Alex, I'll say, hey, my class is at 8 a.m. in the basement of a dorm. I need to be there. I don't even have to finish the question. And if you look on my Twitter, if you look on my Instagram, you're going to see they're the who's who of what's going on in the business world.
And again, that has to feel good, because that's definitely a testament to just basically how you treat other people. When you treat other people the right way is when other people are more than willing to go out and do things for you. So it's keep doing what you're doing, Andy. You're doing something right.
I appreciate that, Alex. And I'll tell you, the guy that connected us is at the top of the list in terms of connecting people. Kevin Malice, as well as his
His
partner.
whole family is just an unbelievable unit. Bill Malice, his dad, coached with my uncle for 20 plus years at Manchester High School. So very intimate with the Malice family in general. They're just a group of just unbelievable individual people. They're just awesome.
I agree 100%.
So we're going to jump into some real Rutgers athletics. We kind of got back to the sidetrack, but I'm just really super interested in the wealth management part, which we might actually even talk a little more after this. Perfect. But Rutgers in general, you are a Rutgers alumnus, and still very involved, and you're very involved in the athletics program. I have to ask, what is your opinion on them deciding now? What has it been, 5 years since they've moved to the Big Ten, something like that?
Yeah, something like that. I love it. I love it. I mean, the Big Ten, other than the Ivy League, is one of the premier academic conferences.
Oh yeah,
in the country. It's teams that have been there forever. I know they've added Penn State. Some years ago, Nebraska came in, Maryland and Rutgers just came in, but the base of them have been there forever. So you're looking back at the guys with the leather helmets running around and all of that. It's still the same team, same pom-poms, the whole bit. So we all grew up watching the Big Ten. So to be part of such a class act like that, I really enjoy. And I do think we're hitting the ground running with it. I think a lot of the programs are already at the top. I think Steve Peichel and C. Vivian Stringer you can put up against any basketball coaches within there. Our field hockey, I mean, across the board, we're very, very solid with how we're representing ourselves.
Yeah, and one thing I noticed with Rutgers in the Big Ten right now, we're not necessarily, besides a few select programs, the team results are coming along slower, but we do have a lot of solid individual talents, which Rutgers has always had in its history because they do pull from New Jersey talent, and New Jersey talent is one of the deepest talent pools in the nation in terms of all sports. What is it going to take for Rutgers? Because when they left the Big East, they were a good school in all programs. Rutgers was near the top. I ran track and field for Marist College. I had a buddy who ran for Rutgers, Monroe Kearns. Very good runner for them, good 800-meter runner. And it was always fun to see Rutgers coming in. And now that they're in the Big Ten, it's a higher talent level, higher competitive level in the Big Ten than it was in the Big East. How much longer do you see it taking before Rutgers takes a step of being more competitive in all of their programs?
I mean, I think it's going to take time. I think it's easier now to attract people. I mean, you can throw the wrestling is as good as absolutely anybody in the country. Some of the individuals.
And they're getting better. They're getting much better.
It's incredible. Anthony Ashnault, some of these people are as good as anybody out there. I know what you're saying across the board. I think just saying you're in the Big Ten now, who you can attract, it helps. And again, it starts with academics with the Big Ten, which is always very important to me. I think it's gonna move forward swiftly, and I think we're already not. I don't see us lagging as much as some people might paint us. I think we already have some very solid programs.
Well, everyone likes to hate on Rutgers. They really do. It's been the butt of a lot of jokes nationally that we're the state school in New Jersey, and it has never been amazing in the major sports. And football has been a focus, and football is really the main focus. Football and basketball are two of the big ones nationally. And our football program was really doing well at the end of the Big East time. They come into the Big Ten, and it hasn't been beautiful. This year, I feel, was a little bit of a step back. I had huge aspirations for true freshman Arthur Sikowski. I thought he was going to be a very good quarterback. I still think he's going to be a very good quarterback. But there were some holes on that football team that I never expected Rutgers to have. The skill players, they really weren't up to Rutgers standards. The defense wasn't playing that tough style of defense that I was used to seeing. And I follow Rutgers, I'm from Jersey, so by default, I really have always followed Rutgers. What do you think, considering how much of a spotlight football has, what is it going to take for Coach Ash to get more of the top New Jersey recruits? Because if he keeps guys home, Rutgers is a top program in the nation. So how far along is Coach Ash in getting to that point?
Well, it's always going to take longer when you're doing it the right way. He's doing it. He's building a solid foundation. He's bringing the right guys in. And when you talk about some of the skill positions, if you look at Pacheco or Blackshear and some of these guys, Bo Melton, Sikowski's can throw the length of the field. We're not really in that bad a shape. The defense is always going to take the younger guys. We had a lot of red shirts this year, but look at the top talent. Some of these guys will be leaving, though. Saquon, Isaiah, Bless. I mean, you can put these guys up with anybody. That's who's falling in. They were playing. The guys on the bench might have played at some other program. So we're not as far behind. But what Chris Ash, AJ Blazik, Toby Ninus, what these guys are putting together is a solid program that we're just going to keep moving up. A solid notch. They're not taking shortcuts. They're not, just like I described with my own business. Believe me, I could have been doing triple the business if my door was wide open and I was promising people those 30% returns. You want to do it so you're not taking a step back in the third or fourth year. I'm 100% in with Ash and Blazik and these guys, and I am proud to be a supporter of this program at this point. I love how they're doing this, and they're doing it in the right way.
Andy, they need to have you on all the Rutgers football post games where Ray Lucas is going crazy. We need to have you as the comic voice because your confidence in just all the programs and especially the football program would just put so many Rutgers fans at ease.
I'm glad to hear that.
But I do see what you're saying. Bo Melton to me this year, he was supposed to be the guy, and I think I like Bo. He has a lot of skills. He's extremely fast. I think he needed that this year to kind of kick him in the tail. He's a junior this year, I believe, right, Bo?
I think he's a sophomore. I could
okay.
be wrong, but think about it. He's been there 2 years, two different offenses, two different quarterbacks, maybe three different quarterbacks. You can argue in there. You're against the Big Ten. Bo knows receiving. Okay, so I think he's going to not be a problem. He's going to be something saying, "Holy cow! I'm glad we have this guy." It just takes time. Football is very different than basketball, where you just 6'9" guy that has wide shoulders and can shoot from the outside, and we're off to the races. Here, we need to build a line. We need to fill in gaps here and there, and that's what they're trying to do.
And I'm happy you say they need to build a line because before this year, when I saw some of the things, and like I said, you are a little more intimate with the program, so you probably see a few different things because you know a lot of these guys on a personal level as well. For me, what I saw on the outside looking in, the major thing that Chris Ash needs to do, and I thought he had it this year because our offensive linemen are meatier than they ever have been. But he just needs – I don't think we have an offensive and defensive line that can compete for a full 60 minutes against these Big Ten teams because just the sheer power and size, we have guys that can show flashes. Defensively, we have some solid pass rushers. But I just think in terms of the power running style, we get worn down. And on offense, our big guys get eaten up every once in a while by some of these Michigans and Penn States and Ohio States who eat up everyone else as well. But just in terms of a Rutgers standpoint, I just want to see them be a lot more competitive on the offensive line where they're giving our quarterback a lot more time than we have seen.
Yeah, we're working towards that. I think we have the best offensive line coach in the country. We probably have the best strength coach in the country, Kenny Parker. So you're talking A.J. Blazik, the people he's bringing in, even today, literally today, the people he's the way he's talking to them. You got to realize the third and fourth string at Ohio State, there's no talent drop off. I might be the third or fourth string on the O-line. When there's injuries, when you've only been in the conference for a short time and you have a new coaching staff coming in, you really do have to give it time, especially on the line. But again, they're doing it the right way. They have guys sitting on the sidelines that they're just grooming to move in there.
Again, I'm excited, and I'm making this pledge right now. Anyone from Rutgers, if you're listening, put Andy on that post game. We need him there. He will put us all at ease. So we're going to do a quick jump. Unfortunately for you, you're a Mets fan. And and we're going to talk a little bit about the Mets as well. I really have to get your opinion on their new GM hire. It's outside the box. It's something that the Mets did get some criticism for. Brody Van Wagenen, he is a former mega agent. How do you feel about this?
Well, if I was a coach, I'd be a player's coach. If I was a GM, I'd be a player's GM. This guy's coming from the sports agency side of it, so he's by definition going to be looking at it from the player's standpoint. A lot of general managers think you can just throw money at people and your team's going to get better and you're going to grow. You have to attract them as people as well. You have to know how to relate to them. You have to be a personality that's going to bring in players they want to be with as well, that they think they are going to stay there and win and move forward. I think he's going to be coming from the right angle. I think it is a unique niche where he's coming from, but it's the same place I'd be coming from if somebody that is pleading, that's been working on the contracts for players as opposed to trying to keep them at bay. I mean, it's a 180-degree reversal of what we've been seeing. I'm excited about it. I just hope we get some sort of allowance so we can attract some players with some decent money. But I'm hoping he does have the personality, and from what I've seen, I think he does, to try to bring in some top talent.
Do you think he'll be able to get the Wilpons to open up their checkbook? Because, like you said, he was on the agent side. He was on the side of negotiating to get guys more money because he understood the psyche of players and what they needed and wanted in order to perform well. Sandy Alderson, I will defend him. He did make some moves and spend money, but unfortunately, the guys he spent money on, the Bays and things like that, and Yoenis Cespedes, when he's playing, he's great, but he doesn't want to play anymore for the Mets, obviously. So he has spent some money, but it has backfired. Do you think that Van Wagenen is going to get a more open checkbook so he can go out and compete a little bit more with the crosstown rival Yankees and Brian Cashman in terms of getting free agents?
Yeah, well, first of all, I loved Sandy. He also was a sports management professor, and we had shared the dais a few times in different areas in New York and New Jersey. So I had a good time with him. I enjoyed him personally. And I think some of the moves he made will pan out. I'm not saying that they should have moved away from him. As far as Brody, I don't know. Opening up some of these checkbooks are tougher than others, and sometimes they panic and then throw money at the wrong person after they've already missed a situation. I haven't seen a consistency in terms of what they're willing to spend on. I would hope they'd put it into building it from the ground up with the strengthening the minor leagues and just start trying to get a pipeline of players so we can be good for 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, that would be, and that's one thing that Brian Cashman did while I'm a Yankees fan, and he built up that farm with like 2-3 moves of getting out Andrew Miller, Chapman, and a few McCann, just one after another, getting rid of them just to build up the farm. And we've seen the fruits of that. The Yankees have some great young players coming up. One of the things that, talking about building up the farm, I know you know Sandy now. Obviously, that's, you just said that. I don't want you to criticize him too much. But did he make the mistake of not trading DeGrom and trying to build that farm last year?
I know. That is.
It's loaded, and it's tough to now criticize a friend, and I know you probably don't want to do that. But in the least critical way, do you think it's something that might come back to, like you said, building it from the ground up? Last year was the perfect chance where nothing was going. You have the Cy Young pitcher on your roster. You probably could have gotten a nice haul for him.
See, this is the thing. Right now is when you hold on to this guy. People are still upset about the Mets getting rid of Tom Seaver in 1977.
Yeah.
And they should have kept him. He was the franchise guy. I mean,
my dad's a Yankees fan, and he was mad about that. He liked watching Tom Seaver pitch.
Exactly. You had a win every 4 days, and you have a packed house every 4 days. Plus, they have Syndergaard. No, I don't think they have to abandon ship on that. The guy's 30. He's going to be effective for another 5-6 years, maybe beyond that. Look at Verlander, and some of these guys are still at their peak. I think you stay with something. You need the fans, some continuity with the fans, to have a star out there, not just a star, one of the best in the business.
Okay, I think, and maybe it was selfish of me because there was rumors about him coming to the Yankees, so I wanted you guys to trade him to the Yankees, but I see where you're coming from, and I heard a lot of Mets fans kind of making that argument of, why are we going to give away this dude? He's been so great for us. Syndergaard is great. Why not keep him and build? So there is two grounds. No one knows how either of them are going to work out. One thing that I did see, and I saw yesterday, and I know I sent you the little bit of an itinerary of what we're going to talk about generally, and it involved Robbie Cano, because Robbie Cano was in the rumors of coming to the Mets. And I got an update on ESPN yesterday, not too long after I sent it to you, and it was like, there is a deal in place for the Mets to get Robbie Cano. And I was like, that'll be kind of awesome if this breaks. Nothing happened today, but how would you feel as a Mets fan if they went out and pursued Robbie Cano, and what would you be willing to give up?
Yeah, I mean, if he was the final piece for a championship team, I'd be 100% in getting him. I love the guy. He's a good guy. I've actually golfed with him. David Ortiz has a tournament down in Punta Cana every year. He's a heck of a great guy.
That's great.
And all of that, gracious, great teammate, has a ring, has done everything. I mean, a few years ago,
He was the best player in the world at one point.
Absolutely. Now, how he is on the bench of teaching guys and everything, he's got a great personality. So I imagine he's very good with teaching the younger guys. And I also think he still has some gas in the tank to do well for another year or two. It'd be the opposite of my overall theory of trying to getting young people in and trying to build the team, build the whole organization for the long term. But it's hard to believe Robbie Cano could ever be a negative on the bench.
Would you give up a Nimmo? Would you give up a Conforto or for a guy like Cano where they're younger and they do have that ceiling for a guy who is well known and, like you said, has a good amount in the tank left? I think he still has another 3-4 years of effectiveness. Maybe not greatness, but definitely being a very effective player. Would you give up one of these younger guys? Maybe not one of your star pitchers, but like I said, a Brandon Nimmo, a Conforto, or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think Conforto had an off year and is going to absolutely explode this year. I think Nimmo is coming into his own, and the fans love him. So picking those guys really makes it a very, very difficult.
But I feel like those are the guys that you're going to have to trade to get a talent like Cano.
I know that. I know. It makes it difficult, and he is 36, and it is a tough situation. You really pick two guys, and those are the guys that teams would definitely want. It makes it difficult. I think they're all lefty bats that you named. So it would be trading in that way for one. It's a tough one.
Now, if you're sitting there and you're Brody and you're looking at this and you saw all the heat that Sandy has taken over the last 2-3 years, getting rid of Daniel Murphy, not signing him, and what Daniel Murphy became over in their rival team, the Nationals, do you want to be the GM that pulls the trigger and gets rid of Conforto because of an off year and then all of a sudden he turns into a superstar?
That's what I'm saying. I think the guy is already coming back as an off at the end of the year, too. He's starting to go to opposite field with power again.
The Mets played good baseball to finish the year. They really did. They played .500 baseball.
Yeah, they absolutely did. No, yeah, Cano, I love the guy. That would be the opposite of what I would be trying to do. Nothing to do with him individually, but I think they need a few guys coming in and to turn around the organization.
All right, Brody, you hear that? Andy has spoken, so don't go get Cano. But all right, Andy, thank you very much for coming on. This was lots of fun.
Yeah, my pleasure, Alex. That was a lot of fun.
And again, this is Andy Koerner. He is a grad school professor over at Rutgers. He is also an entrepreneur, and we talked at length about him being a financial advisor, wealth manager for professional athletes, NFL, NBA, WNBA, MLB. You name the league, basically, and Andy has someone there. Again, Andy, lots of fun. I really appreciate you coming on. I hope that I can have you on again in the future at some point down the line.
I would enjoy that. I appreciate the opportunity. Good luck with this.
Thank you very much. Again, everyone, I'm Alex Cuesta, host Sports Opinions Podcast. Find me on Twitter and Instagram at @A_Cuesta30. Find Sports Opinions on Twitter at SportsOpinion30, Instagram SportsOpinions30. Go ahead, visit the Facebook page, and you can find this podcast on virtually anywhere you can listen to podcasts. Spotify, iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio, YouTube, Spreaker, Apple Podcasts, Google Play Music. Like I said, basically anywhere. Just go throw it in a Google search. You'll find it. Really appreciate everyone that listens. Again, Andy, thank you for coming on. Everybody, have a good one.